How climate change has went from a hot political issue to a tool to divide and polarize the public in just 5 years. We're going to read into this piece from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Byline Times with the headline of how climate change went from a hot political issue to a tool to divide and polarize the public in just 5 years. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. Yes, how has climate change changed? Not just how it's changed, but how it's divided and polarized people. But I don't just think it's a case of just a simple case of people being divided and polarized by just opinions and thoughts and whatnot. I do generally think that the way the media has portrayed climate change, whether it is whatever outlet or newspaper or media, or even ourselves from content creators, of how people take their perceptions of climate change. But I also always say to people that regardless of where you get your information about climate change from, when you actually see the weather reports, see from mainstream media the damage and the destruction that climate change is causing, the adverse weathers that we are seeing more than before, the consistent breaking of recording temperatures, it's very hard for someone who actually pays attention and looks at all these to say to yourself, how can there not be something here? How can there not be something we should be concerned about when India has broken temperature records? Africa's Sahara Desert has expanded so much more than it has expanded more as well over the past decade as well. It's actually gotten bigger, and it's actually growing because of the changing in weather patterns as well. We also know that Australia has had record-breaking heat as well. China has hit some temperatures increases as already this year, and these are just some of the fundamental facts that are going in place. Not to mention that the worrying about what's happening with the polar ice caps. There is less big chunks of ice than there used to be as well. Some of the biggest chunks that have been out there up in the Antarctic have disappeared, and many are wondering what's happened to it. Where has it gone? So this is a lot of cause for concern. Is it really just a coincidence that this is nothing to do with man-made and this is simply a natural phenomenon? After many scientists, after decades, have warned us about the potential of climate change, how can we not say that the CO2 emissions by fossil companies, for example, by the emissions that we have produced as man or the human race has done, how can we not see a correlation there? It's very hard for me to try to understand, and I really do. I do try to put myself in the shoes of trying to understand why people generally believe that the human race has got nothing to do with climate change and it is simply natural. I try to understand, but I just don't see this argument. I just don't see, based on what I have read, what I've learned, and what I've heard from many different people and backgrounds. I just find it very hard to believe. How can you not see that mankind is not responsible for our planet being more warmer than what it is? It's very hard for me to believe that. Now, this piece also says that climate leadership is not the vote loser its opponents like to portray as it is, but the danger for the climate movement is assuming public support will endure forever, argues Russell Warfield. So what does he mean by that? So, as you guys know, here in the UK, especially those who have been watching and listening for a while, we have quite a diverse media and landscape. And one of the things that we're starting to hear more and more of is a lot of this myth of debunking of what's happening with climate change, or trying to undermine it in many, many ways. But what many people don't know is that the majority of these people who are trying to claim that this is nothing to do with gas and oil firms, or this is nothing to do, and that these are natural phenomenons, are those of certain think tanks, are those who are lobbied by these oil and gas giants, but you don't know about them because they don't say them publicly. And more of these opinionists are coming into the mainstream media to try and push this narrative that climate change isn't real and that you should be focusing on your issues, that you shouldn't worry about the planet getting warmer, that you shouldn't be bothered about what's happening with the planet. Who cares? It's going to be so like the perception of, try to paint this perception of, who cares? Aren't you more concerned about your well-being than the planet, sort of thing. This is the pattern that they try to, the imagery and the thought process that they try to paint into you, because the oils and gas companies of the world know that they need to keep running, and as they need to keep making the money and stay in power and keep the bottom dollar, the bottom line of staying rich and wealthy, and they will always continue to try and influence politicians as well as medias in order to make people believe that there is no such thing as climate change. Excuse me. This is what is happening here in the UK. This is why you have protesters who are calling this out and saying, look at what is happening to our country, not just here, but around the world, and seeing what is happening. And then you have certain media outlets and newspapers saying that these people are disruptive and whatnot, when they are simply protesting, which is in their democratic right to do so, to protesting. And some people are in agreement that they want to silence them simply because they care about the planet and they want to save it. Don't you want to save this planet? Do you not care? And let me put this another way to you, for those of you who don't believe in climate change. Do you care about the environment? Do you care about nature? Do you care about the wildlife? Do you care about your surroundings, the lush green of environment? Because if you do, surely that what you've been hearing about climate change for so long, surely that does worry you of some extent. Because do we not want to protect and look after this planet? Who cares about oil and gas in all seriousness? Yeah, why can't we switch from oil and gas? Why do we always have to rely on it? Yeah, we can change. Mankind can change. It's perfectly normal for us to change. We have adapted over time, and we should adapt to move away from these things. We should do. We shouldn't have to rely on them. But the reason we are relying on them is because of people in power with wealth and money that are pouring in political leaders and into medias to portray a picture that is not true. Scientists and experts have been saying this for decades. These are experts who have been saying this about climate change. I'm not a scientist expert and not some conspiracy nutwing hiding in a Facebook group. Yeah, these are actual scientists who have been saying these. And yet you don't want to listen to them, and you want to listen to your friend down the pub or your little group of socialized friends on Facebook or whatever, to think just in this belief mindset that these people are just trying to harm us. No. What's wrong with actually wanting to make the planet more environmentally friendly? Why is that such a bad thing? And there's also a thing, I feel that there's a sense of scareness as well. People are scared. Don't be scared about change. Don't be scared about it, because you are scared about it. The reality is that we have to change, and we have to stop relying on these kind of companies. We have to reduce our CO2 emissions. This is a fundamental fact. It's a fundamental fact. Scientists have been saying this, and world leaders know this. You're just choosing to stick your head in the sand and hope that it'll all go away. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. So let's read into this. So the 2019 general election was arguably the first climate election in the UK, unlike any before it. Climate was a doorstep issue. Polling consistently is one of the top 3 issues the voters cared about. Channel 4 hosted the first ever climate debate. There was a veritable arms race on tree planting, and the opposition produced a manifesto which viewed the entire economy through the lens of climate change. If it wasn't for Get Brexit Done, the fact that climate featured so prominently in the 2019 election would have been one of the most enduring talking points of the election. Just 2 years prior, during the 2017 general election, climate was almost entirely absent from mainstream political politics. The Green Party's Caroline Lucas had to wander around Westminster with party activists waving a giant green question mark, asking where's the environment in this election. In 2015, the then Labour leader Ed Miliband, today the chief flag bearer for climate for the opposition, did not carve a word about it into his infamous Ed Stone. Yeah, he did not say anything there, did he? So why did the climate emergency suddenly take root in the electorate's concerns in 2019? The increase in interest coincided with the arrival of a wave of street activism from school strikers and Extinction Rebellion, along with more middle-brow interventions from the likes of David Attenborough, with figures such as Greta Thunberg and actress Emma Tompkins knitting the two camps together into a broad-based coalition. The re-emergence of the Greens probably did not hurt. Committees activists pushing Labour into developing a Green New Deal also played their part. There was also a cross-party political consensus. The campaign behind the landmark Climate Change Act of 2008 successfully built a cross-party coalition of parliamentary support, while also establishing a fully independent climate change committee, which helped prevent the issue of being turned into a political football. A departing Theresa May tried to revive a tarnished legacy by passing the legislation for hitting net zero by 2050, while the incoming Boris Johnson leapt upon the upcoming UN climate talks in Glasgow with zeal, believing that they could be for his premiership what the 2012 Olympics was for his London mayoralty. The contrast 5 years later could hardly be more stark. Today, government ministers espouse conspiracy theories about 15-minute cities, with Prime Minister himself delivering a set-piece speech about slowing down on net zero. As we head into the 2024 general election, support for climate action among all demographics of the public has stayed strong, but the political consensus is in real peril. For the first time, there has been a serious and sincere attempt to divert and polarize the public on climate change. So what went wrong? The increased influence of right-wing broadcasters is one reason, and the worsening misinformation and radicalization online. Polarization has become an established feature of public life since Brexit. No doubt the search for the next Brexit, some MPs formed the Net Zero Scrutiny Group as the newest hobby horse. More shots began to circle following the Uxbridge by-election last year, which was framed as the quasi-referendum on the expansion of a clean air zone into outer London. Labour failed to take the seat, which was the read of proof that the public despise green policy. Soon after, Rishi Sunak reached for the anti-net zero lever in the hopes of reviving his fortunes. His polling continued to plummet, while London Mayor Sadiq Khan was re-elected as an unprecedented third term at his biggest vote share, with no noticeable anti-ULEZ vote either in the inner or outer London. Most people support ULEZ, then oppose it. Even outer Londoners, meanwhile, polling on low-traffic neighbourhoods. Another cultural flashpoint shows support for the scheme has gone up year on year. Take note for those who hate ULEZ. Climate leadership is not the vote loser its opponents like to portray it is. The danger for climate movement, however, is assuming that this public support will endure forever. The reality is it won't, because of the media that we have. Hence the need for media reform, which I have said on numerous occasions and will continue to keep saying until the cows come home. Following this year's election, it is possible that a defeated Conservative Party will turn into a more right-wing and populist leader. Equality possible that the reform might continue to build momentum as a pressure group with similar effectiveness as UKIP. For decades, progressives are guarded against reactionary forces which are primarily anti-immigration in nature. It is becoming increasingly plausible that the next serious right-wing threat in the UK will coincide around anti-green politics, not that the two are incompatible, and that its advocates will become more convincing. What contemporary climate deniers have correctly recognised is that low-hanging fruit on the path to decarbonisation have been picked. We have, for example, kicked out coal from our increasing clean energy mix. And we have days when wind alone is delivering the majority of our electricity. Increasingly, however, our decarbonisation will travel through the way we live our lives. The people who fly the most will have to fly less. Road miles must be slashed. We will have to change things we eat. This will provide more fertile soil for the politics of grievance, whether real or imagined. And the good news is that climate policy can bring people together. If Labour forms the next government, even a watered-down version of its £28 billion pledge will likely amount to the boldest climate action pursued by a UK government. But the risk is that without good public engagement and equity policy making, which puts the burden of decarbonisation on the broadest shoulders, opponents of climate action might succeed in building a meaningful constituency among the public. The antidote to this is not to shy away from climate, but to celebrate the success of climate policy and to communicate the good and that it is doing in people's lives today. An early limitless test will come in the form of lifting the ban on offshore wind, as Labour has promised to do so. The de facto ban came into place in the mid-2010s, bowing to pressure from Conservative backbenchers. In reality, it was never actually unpopular, not even among those living in near political sites. Unlocking this clean energy will slash carbon while bringing down bills and strengthening energy security, things that would bring together voters from across the political spectrum. Since a minority will protest, they will be seized upon by those who want this unrepresented group that will have a distorting effect on the debate, converting a much wider culture point at this point. The next government will need to hold its nerve and trust that the true popularity of the policy will win the day. The next election after this year was due to be held in 2019, 10 years after the first time that climate was a key issue in the national campaign. It will either outperform 2019 as a high watermark for climate, with the main parties promising to go further and faster in a world rapidly transitioning to a low-carbon economy, or will it be 2019's evil twin? We must all be awake of the danger of insurgents, populist forces successfully polarising the public over climate emergency. The next 5 years will determine which path we will take at this crossroads. And I do think that it will, obviously, how Labour progress in terms of the climate will definitely be one to look at for sure, guys. I am optimistic as of right now that Labour will try to push more green policies, but will they go far enough is a question that we need to ask ourselves. Now, obviously, they are going to be introducing some new green policies, obviously. The new green policy, obviously, but they have obviously watered it down, the 28 billion that they have watered down. There's no question about that. And while I can say it's a start, is it going far enough? I think it's a question that needs to be had. Now, obviously, many people within the UK will say, well, Regan, yes, we do care about climate change, but we also have a cost of living crisis, we have an immigration crisis, we have an NHS crisis. And yes, I'm fully aware of all these crises that are taking place in the UK. But make no mistake about it, what's happening onto our planet is a very serious issue, and we need to play our part in it. And let me be very, very clear here. Just because other countries aren't doing their bit doesn't mean that we get to slack off too. Yeah? That does not give us the right to slack off too. Yes, of course, we should be kicking countries that aren't doing their bit to reduce climate emissions. Rightfully so. And you're right. There are many countries that aren't doing nowhere near enough, i.e. such as the US and China, for example. More needs to be done from them, for example. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing our bit. No, we should be doing our part, and we should be doing everything that we can in our part to help reduce emissions as well. We want cleaner air here. We want to simplify things. We want to recycle. Yeah, we'd all like to have more money in our bank accounts. Yeah, well, recycling, saving, renewing energy. That kind of stuff will save us money. More money for the taxpayer, more money in the treasury, to go towards, I don't know, how about more public services? We want better public services, right? In the next 10, 20 years or so. These are the kind of things that we want, the changes that we want. Because we don't want to be spending more than we need to. Nobody wants to spend more money on things that you rely on, but you want to be spending less on things that you rely on, don't you? So there is also a cost. There is a cost benefit, and yes, without a shadow of a doubt, that there are some initial costs. But like everything, you're talking about, yes, things may cost now, but it will save down the road because it will pay it back in dividends. Look at the transport network in London with London Underground. The amount of money that was cost to make it now, it's paid itself back now. When you look back on it now. And how reliable it is. You look at all these, imagine all these homes that we have here having solar panels. Imagine the amount of money you can save on your energy bills just on that. Imagine, the amount of things that you use and reuse and gets recycled back into uses without having to constantly keep using the same material, using different materials all the time. There's so many opportunities here, guys. Yeah. so many opportunities, and we should look to take advantage of them. And we have made progress. And I will say that the Conservatives have made some progress here in the UK when it comes to climate. I'm not taking the Conservatives away that saying that they haven't done anything, because they have done some things. But they have also tried to hold back as well in certain parts as well. And Labour need to take it far more forward than the Conservatives ever have done in the last 14 years. Whether they will or not is obviously a thing for question. But make no mistake about it, climate change is real, it is happening, and we need to do our part. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of climate change and how it will affect this general election? How do you think the parties and their politics are on this? How do you guys think climate change is affecting the world currently right now, as opposed to things as to what else is going on in the world? Let me know your thoughts and more in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative or interesting, please hit the like button, we greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.